She asked for it the way you ask for something you expect to be refused, quietly, with her arms already crossed over her chest against the cold, looking at me sideways rather than straight on. Not quite a question, almost a question, the kind that leaves room to pretend you didn't ask it if the answer goes the wrong way. I took it off and handed it to her. She put it on. It was too big for her by a full size, and she didn't care at all, and that was the first thing I noticed about her that I filed away as important. The jacket never came back. I am not sure when I stopped expecting it to. My name is Daniel Voss. I was 32, a restoration carpenter. I worked with old wood mostly, the kind in houses built before plywood and particle board made things faster and worse. Joinery, flooring, millwork, the particular skill of reading a piece of timber to find the grain underneath the damage and work with it rather than against it. It was slow work and it required patience and a specific kind of attention that most people find either admirable or tedious, depending on their temperament. I had been running my own small shop for 3 years. Before that, I had worked for a larger firm and learned what I needed to learn and then left, which is the standard arc of a craftsman who is better working alone. Not because I was difficult, at least not primarily, but because the quality of the work matters to me in a way that is not always commercially convenient, and I had found it easier to be honest about that when I was the one absorbing the cost of the honesty. I lived in a neighborhood in the older part of the city, the kind of place where the houses were built with the same attention I gave my work, and had aged into something the new construction never would. My apartment was on the second floor of a 3-story building that had been renovated badly in the 90s, and well in the years since. I had, when I moved in, spent 2 weekends fixing things that the renovation had gotten wrong, which my landlord allowed in exchange for a modest rent reduction and a standing policy of not asking what I had done to the baseboards in the kitchen. I had not been in a relationship for 2 years, which I had decided was a reasonable number of years to be by yourself after one ended badly. Mine had ended badly in the specific way where nobody is the villain, where 2 people simply stop being good for each other and one of them figures it out first and says so, and the other one spends 6 months understanding that they were right. I was the second one. Her name was Kara. We had been together for 3 years, long enough to have built something that had the shape of a life together without quite being one, long enough to know each other's habits and preferences and the particular way each of us was difficult, which we had managed by not pressing too hard on the things that mattered most, and pressing too hard on the things that didn't. She had left in March. I had spent the rest of that year in the slow, unglamorous work of understanding that she was right, that what we'd had was real and was also over, and that both things could be true simultaneously. After that, I had gotten good at the work in a different way. Not that I hadn't been good at it before, but work, when it is the main thing, takes on a different quality. I went in earlier. I stayed later. I took commissions that interested me even when they didn't pay well, and turned down commissions that paid well when I couldn't find anything to be interested in. I was quieter. I had always been quiet, but this was a different kind of quiet, the kind that is not waiting for anything, not building toward anything, just occupying the space in front of it. I had spent those 6 months, and then a year and a half after that, making a reasonably good case to myself that I was fine, that the work was enough. That the particular satisfaction of fitting 2 pieces of old wood together correctly was a sufficient kind of daily meaning. It was, most days. Some days it wasn't. I had learned not to examine those days too directly. The night I gave her the jacket I had been fine for a while, and was not expecting anything to change. It was an outdoor summer concert in the park, one of those evenings that starts warm and golden at 7, and turns cold around 9 when the sun drops behind the tree line and the wind comes in off the water, and you understand why everyone who has been to these things before came with layers. I had gone with my friend Marcus, who had invited 7 people and shown up with 2 of them, which was consistent with his approach to most things. The blanket Marcus had brought was small. The beer Marcus had brought was adequate. The band was good in the way that bands are good at outdoor concerts, imperfectly, with the wind taking a quarter of it and the conversation of the people behind us taking another quarter, which made the parts that came through cleanly feel more earned, as though the music had worked to reach you. She was sitting 1 blanket over with a different group, 3 women and a man I didn't know, clustered around a lantern that was doing heroic work against the dark. I had been aware of her in the peripheral way you are aware of someone adjacent to you at these things, not watching, just noting. She had dark hair and was wearing a light dress that had made complete sense at 7 and made less sense now. She had her arms wrapped around herself in the posture of someone who has assessed the situation, found it cold, decided to stay anyway because the thing worth staying for was worth being cold. I had a jacket. A canvas work jacket, worn in, olive-colored, the kind that has absorbed enough shop time that it holds warmth better than it looks like it should. I had put it on when the temperature dropped and mostly forgotten about it since. She turned toward me. It was the first time she had looked directly at me all evening. She had dark eyes and an expression that was wry about something, possibly the situation, possibly herself, possibly the gap between the dress and the weather. "Can I borrow your jacket?" she said. Then immediately, "That's a strange thing to ask a stranger. You can say no." "I can say no," I agreed. "But you're not going to," she said. It wasn't quite a question. "No," I said. "I'm not." I took it off and handed it over. She put it on. It sat on her shoulders like a coat rack. The sleeves passed her hands, and she didn't make any of the expected gestures about how it was too big or how she'd only need it for a minute. She just put it on and turned back toward the band. "Thank you," she said, to the middle distance. "You're welcome," I said, to approximately the same place. We watched the band for a while. The lantern light moved with the wind. A few minutes later she turned back. "I'm Ren," she said. "Daniel," I said. She nodded, as though this confirmed something. "The jacket smells like sawdust," she said. "I'm a carpenter," I said. "Good sawdust or bad sawdust?" I looked at her. "Is there bad sawdust?" "Construction site sawdust," she said, "versus workshop sawdust. They smell different." "Workshop," I said. "Restoration work." She considered this. "So you take broken things and make them whole again." "I take old things," I said, "and work with what's still good." She looked at me for a moment with that direct, level gaze. Then she turned back to the band. "I like that better," she said. At the end of the night, she offered to give the jacket back. She was already shrugging it off when I shook my head. "Keep it for now," I said. "It's cold." She stopped. Half off her shoulders, the jacket caught between coming and going. She looked at me with the directness she had brought to everything that evening. Not reading into it, not performing gratitude, just taking in the information. "I don't know your last name," she said. "Voss," I said. "Daniel Voss." "Ren Halliday," she said. She pulled the jacket back on, settled it, did not look away from me. "Do you want my number so you can get it back?" "Yes," I said. I was aware, even as I said it, that I would have said yes regardless of the jacket. There was a quality to the way she had said good sawdust or bad sawdust, and I liked that better, and the way she had simply put on a too large jacket without performing any uncertainty about it. There was a quality to all of that I wanted more of. I did not have a name for it yet. I just knew I wanted my number in her phone and hers in mine, and that the jacket was a reasonable mechanism for getting there. She put her number in my phone. I walked home without the jacket in the summer night that had gone genuinely cold, and I was not thinking about the jacket at all. She texted me 2 days later. The message was 4 words, "Do you want it?" I looked at the message for longer than 4 words requires. It was a clean question that had at least 2 answers, depending on what you thought it was asking about. I was fairly sure she knew that. I was fairly sure she had written it that way on purpose. Then I wrote back, "Not particularly. Do you?" There was a pause. Then, "I might keep it a little longer." I wrote, "That's fine." She wrote, "There's a coffee place on Emmett Street. Saturday at 10 if you want the jacket back." I wrote, "I'll be there." I was there. She was there first, which I would come to understand was how she operated. She arrived places before she needed to and used the time to observe, which is a quality I recognized because it was close to one I had myself. She was in jeans and a light sweater and my jacket, which she was wearing with the same lack of self-consciousness she'd worn it with at the concert. Like she'd decided it was hers and wasn't performing any uncertainty about it. "You kept the jacket on," I said. "I'm returning it in person," she said. "That requires wearing it to the handoff." "That's a very specific interpretation," I said. "I'm a precise person," she said. She was. I would learn this more thoroughly over coffee. Ren Halliday was 30, a medical translator, which meant she spent her days converting language that mattered in contexts where imprecision could cost something real. A misread dosage, a miscommunicated diagnosis, a symptom described in one language that does not have a direct equivalent in another, and must be rendered accurately, or not at all. She had studied linguistics in 2 languages and had taught herself a third because she found the structure of it interesting, the way different languages encoded the same reality differently, the things each one could say that the others couldn't. She read the way I worked with wood, finding what was underneath the surface. The grammar of a thing, the logic that governed how it fit together. She asked questions the way someone does when they actually want the answers, and not just the conversation they lead to. And she listened the way she did everything else, fully, without the flicker of impatience that tells you someone is already composing their next sentence. She asked about the restoration work in a way that was specific and genuine, not the polite version of interest but the actual version, the kind that leads somewhere. She wanted to know about old growth versus second growth timber and whether you could tell the difference in a floor, and I found myself explaining the density of the grain, the way wood grown slowly in a real forest is different from wood grown fast in a managed one, in ways that have nothing to do with appearance and everything to do with how it holds. She listened the way she listened to everything. When I finished, she said, "So the slow things are harder to damage and harder to fake," I said. She considered that. Then she looked out at the canal. We talked for 2 hours over coffee, and then walked along the canal for another hour, because neither of us was ready to stop. She had opinions about the city's waterfront development that were precise and occasionally uncomfortable for anyone who had approved the permits, and I had, as it turned out, opinions about the same subject that aligned with hers in most places, and diverged in 1 or 2 that led to the longest single exchange of the afternoon. She was not bothered by the divergence. Neither was I. That told me something. The jacket never came up. It had ceased to be about the jacket sometime during the first coffee. There was a complication. There is always, in any honest account, a complication. Hers was named Eli. She told me about him on our 3rd proper meeting. Not a date yet, we were still in the careful naming it something else phase, when we were walking through the old district and she stopped at a window display of architectural salvage and said, without looking at me, that she had been in a relationship until 4 months ago and that she was still recalibrating. "How long?" I said. "I meant the relationship." 3 years, she said. She was looking at a pair of old brass door hinges in the window. "He wasn't wrong for me," she said. "We were just done. I think I knew before he did. That makes it harder in some ways." She paused. "He's fine. I'm mostly fine. I just want you to know where I am." I appreciated the precision of that. I told her so. I also told her about Kara, my own 2 years ago, my own 6 months of being the second one to understand, the year and a half after of making a reasonably good case to myself about being fine. And she listened in the way that meant she understood not just what happened, but what it cost. Not just the loss of the person you were when you were with them, the recalibrating of the version of yourself that had been organized around someone else. "So we're both recalibrating," she said. "Some days more than others," I said. She nodded. "I'm not in a hurry," she said. "I just don't want to be careless." Neither did I. I told her that. We stood there in front of the salvage window for a few minutes, looking at old brass hinges and carved corbels and things that had been taken out of one life and were waiting to be part of another one. "You'd know what to do with all of this," she said. "Most of it," I said. "Some of it you can't save. You work with what's still good." She looked at me sideways, the way she had at the concert. Then she started walking again. Neither of us addressed what was obvious, which was that we had both just said, in different words, the same thing about ourselves. We were careful after that. Not coldly, carefully. We met for coffee twice more. We walked along the old district canal on a Sunday when the market was on, which she moved through with the same precision she brought to everything, stopping at things that interested her, passing things that didn't, without performance either way. We went to a film that she had significant opinions about on the walk home, which she delivered without softening them for my benefit, which I found more comfortable than the alternative. I had spent 3 years with someone who softened things, and I had not always known what the actual shape of things was underneath. The jacket lived at her apartment. She had never brought it to our meetings because she kept expecting me to ask for it back, and I never asked because it had stopped being about the jacket sometime in the first week. One evening she mentioned it, almost apologetically, and I told her I hadn't thought about it in 3 weeks, which was true. "Does that bother you?" she said. "No," I said. "Should it?" She thought about it honestly. "I don't know what it means," she said, "that you gave a jacket to a stranger and never asked for it back." "It means I had a spare," I said. She looked at me. "Did you?" A pause. "No," I said, "but I would have said the same thing either way." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I know," and something in the air between us adjusted. Not dramatically, not announced. Just a degree or two. The way a room changes when someone opens a window, and the temperature of the thing that was already there becomes the temperature of the thing coming in. 6 weeks after the concert, she gave it back. We were sitting on the bench outside the coffee place on Emmett Street, a Tuesday evening, the same light the canal gets in late summer when it goes golden just before it goes dark. She had the jacket folded in her lap. "I think I should give this back," she said. I looked at it. "Why?" "Because I've been using it as an excuse," she said, "to keep something tethered that I didn't want to lose yet." She looked at the canal. "I don't need the excuse anymore." She held it out. I took it. We sat there for a minute. "Ren," I said. "Yes. I want to say something directly." She turned toward me. Level, unhurried. "Okay. I haven't been thinking about the jacket for 6 weeks," I said. "I've been thinking about you. I'd like to stop pretending those are different things." There it was, not planned. True, the way things are when you stop managing them. She looked at me for a long moment. Something settled in her face. Not surprise, something quieter than surprise. Recognition. Like a word she'd been waiting to hear in a language she'd been learning. "I'd like that too," she said. "I've been ready for a while. I just wasn't sure you were." "I wasn't," I said. "I am now." "Good," she said. She took the jacket back out of my hands. "Then I'm keeping this." That was 16 months ago. The jacket is still at her place. I know exactly where it is, on the hook by the door, which is where she puts it when she comes in, which is a thing she does automatically now, the way you do things in a space that has become also yours. I live there most nights. We have not made formal announcements about this because we are both people who prefer facts to announcements, and the fact is simply that this is where I am. Her building is older than mine and better maintained, which I know because I looked at the baseboards when she first showed me the apartment, and she watched me do it without comment, which told me she had already figured out that I would do this and had decided it was acceptable. She still translates in 3 languages. She is still working on the 4th, which she says she is learning badly and with commitment, and which she is learning better than she says. She still reads everything for the grammar underneath the surface, the logic of how things fit together. She asks questions when she wants answers and doesn't ask them when she doesn't, and she states things as facts in the way of someone who has put enough care into what she says to believe it, without hedging, without the padding that means you're not sure. I have spent 16 months learning to trust this as a reliable system. It is a reliable system. I still work with old wood. I still take things other people have given up on and find what is still good in them, and I still find it satisfying in the way that does not require explanation. That has not changed. What has changed is the quality of the silence when I work, the particular difference between a silence that is just absence and a silence that is someone in the next room paying attention to something they love. I come home to the second kind now. She said, "I've been using it as an excuse to keep something tethered that I didn't want to lose yet." I think about that sometimes, about all the things we tether while we figure out whether we're ready. The jacket, the canal walks, the careful meetings that were not yet named. The slow work of becoming sure enough to say the thing out loud. I was not ready in June. I was in August. She waited without making it a thing she was waiting for, which is a particular kind of patience I have tried to learn from and have not yet fully managed. The jacket. She borrowed it on a cold night in June and returned it in August and kept it in the same motion, and I have never once minded. What would you have done if someone borrowed your jacket on a cold night and never quite gave it back? And somewhere in those weeks you realized the jacket had nothing to do with it. And have you ever used a small thing to keep someone close while you found the courage to say the real thing out loud? Tell me your story in the comments. If you liked this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.